think we're going to go to our next speaker here. This is Joanne Johnson, and some of you know Joanne. She's an awesome lady and homesteader, and she's going to speak for the next 15-20 minutes and talk about hobby farming and homesteading. And I'm going to just move my computer for her. And I'll turn on the light.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mark. So, I am Joanne Johnson, formerly Joanne Howard, so I've been in the county for a long time. And what do I do? Anything I want. I'm retired. Where do I live? Minden, Ontario. When? For 40 years. Why? To raise my family in the country. How? Any which way but loose. So my family moved up to this beautiful county full-time in 1983 with 5 kids in tow. 4 girls and 1 boy. So there was Tammy, Angela, Michelle, Amy, and Joshua. I'd been coming up here throughout my childhood to visit my grandparents, so I actually knew and loved Minden long before we moved up. I can remember when the town looked like the pictures you now see displayed in some of our stores. And both grocery stores were nestled in right on Main Street. My favorite store was May's Bookstore. It was the closest thing that Minden has ever had to a mall. You walk in the front door and you're in a convenience store. You keep going and you're in a cafe. You keep going and there's the book room. You keep going, you're not done yet, just follow the noise, because in the back there was an arcade that also doubled as a bus depot. So that was happening. Now, after listening to Andrew from Gooderham, not this Andrew, last month, it suddenly dawned on me, like, I think I'm a homesteader. And I've been doing this on and off for 40 years. For the first year that we lived here, we lived in my grandfather's house, finding work, finding a church, making friends, and making another baby. So we got 4 girls, 2 boys. One of our new friends who happened to live on Queen's Line knew of a 50-acre parcel of land for sale just around the corner on Swan Road with an unfinished 3-bedroom house on it. No hydro, no water. No problem. We were able to purchase the property by borrowing the down payment and getting the seller to take back the mortgage. We put in hydro, put in water, put in bunk beds, and moved in. And we were the 5th family in that valley. Here's the great part of this story. The neighbors on both sides of us were teachers and farmers, and we were already friends. I was doing a little bit of housekeeping for the one family, the Warders, and doing childcare for the other family, the Wilbys. In fact, I was able to buy my first cow from the Wilbys by trading the childcare. The cow's name was Bessie. Sarah was the kid's name. We also purchased our first horse from the Wilbys. Rainbow was the horse's name. So, true story. I started babysitting Sarah when she was 8 months old, 1 month after giving birth to my son Dustin, giving me 4 preschoolers at home. Each year, one of the 4 started school. First, Amy goes off to school. Then the next year, Josh goes off. Then Sarah joined them on the school bus. And then Dustin was home alone with nobody to talk to but me. Talk about an adjustment. He never stopped talking. It was hilarious. With so many siblings to talk with and fight with and play with, I could merely go about my day, with stopping occasionally to maybe break up a fight or change a diaper or make some lunch or wipe a nose or dry a tear or kiss an owie or tickle the tummy, you know, just the normal everyday stuff. But before Dustin went to school, I had another baby. So we got Kayla. So we got 4 girls, 3 boys. And on a side note, the August that Dustin was born, I placed first in a singing contest at the Minden Fair. I sang Loretta Lynn's hit, One's on the Way. Now back to my neighbors. The Warders also owned a riding stable, which they ran primarily in the summer. And this became a wonderful opportunity for me and my girls for gainful employment while playing with horses. The Wilbys were farming with horses, cows, chickens, and rabbits. So unbeknownst to us, we were getting our first taste of homesteading. We learned about running and canning suckers, boiling down maple syrup, making green tomato mincemeat, and that was just the beginning, because before too long, we made our first trip down to Woodville Auction Barn and came home with 12 chickens and no chicken coop. No problem, we put them in a tent. And within a few days, we had slapped together a coop of sorts with an 8x8 shanty framed up with saplings. It did the trick, and it gave us a place to bed down the piglets that were soon to join us. So in starting a homestead, or those of you who've been in it for a while, you know this, you have to really be honest about yourself. Know your personality. Are you an all-natural person? Just let them range free, fend for themselves. I know some people who have done this. You lose a lot of birds. You can have guard dogs and red lights to deter the night predators, but make sure you start off with way more birds than you need, because you're going to lose a few. But chores are easy. Maybe you're a redneck. Find some skids on the side of the road, tie them to the roof of your car, and head home with your four-ways on. Screw them together, and by golly, you got a coop. And there's a place up in Carnarvon that you can buy the slabs off the logs, which will really give it a rustic look. Are you creative? Drawing up your own plans and repurposing items that you already have lying around. We repurposed an ice hut and used old east troughs for feeders for some ducks. We covered an expandable gazebo frame, do you know what I mean, the kind that squish down or open up? Covered it with chicken wire for a small run. Windows we got from the dump. Who here can remember when you could pick at the dump for free? Now you get fined for stealing. So I love to be creative when doing my redneck thing, and I built a pen out of 4-foot skids, 3 across, 2 deep, and it had a hinged lid. My husband, on the other hand, he just built a plain ordinary, shanty style pen, 4 walls, a roof, a door, and it was 8 feet at the front. Very user-friendly. You walk in, you walk out. Mine was very cumbersome. It was heavy and hard to manage in the rain and the snow, and very difficult to keep clean. But it was creative, and I didn't have to buy any lumber. Are you a perfectionist? Buy a kit that comes with all the plans and all the materials needed, and you have a weekend project. Or maybe just buy a coop already made and have it delivered. But the point is, you're going to get everything you need and get it in place before you buy the chickens. And on a final note on the subject of housing, just remember the story of the 3 little pigs. So, full-time, part-time, you plan to raise your own meat and maybe have eggs and milk year-round. This means having to do chores year-round. And you need permanent structures to stand up against our winters. It often means having your own breeder pairs that must be fed year-round, and you need adequate birthing areas and a place to keep babies warm. On average, it takes 7 to 8 months from birth to the butcher shop for pigs, and 18 months for beef. Where am I? Chickens are more versatile. Some breeds lay in the summer and some lay more in the winter. So if you pick your breeds wisely, you can have fresh eggs year-round. True story. Back in the early days of our farming, we had quadruplet goats born in the middle of March, and it was too cold in our barn. And a mama goat only has 2 teats. Do the math. So we laid plastic down on the kitchen floor, turned a crib upside down, and we had a playpen for the babies. We had 3 milk goats at the time, so there was plenty of milk to go around, and with beer bottles and rubber nipples, we kept everybody fed and happy. But boy, oh boy, what chaos that added to our family. Now let's see, at the time we had 6 children, plus Sarah during the day. Now 4 more kids running around, mine, mine. I don't know how they knew my name. Part-time. Maybe you just plan on spending a few months raising your own meat and poultry. There's a lot to consider when deciding to do this. Buying regular day-old meat birds, you are committing to a 2-month process. If you decide to go with heritage breed, it takes an average of maybe up to 7 months to bring them up to weight. Regular egg layers, like the Rhode Island Red or the Red Sex Link, will mature in about 4 months, while heritage and dual-purpose breeds take close to 7 months. The other thing that needs to be considered is that dual-purpose breeds lay significantly fewer eggs, and the roosters produce less meat. And this applies to turkeys and ducks and Muscovies as well, with another element, because some of them can fly. If you get the big white turkeys, they get big fast, and they can't fly. But if you go with the heritage breed, like we had some beautiful bourbon red turkeys, well, they took close to 3 to 4 months to get to weight, and they could fly. And using their wings to propel, they could climb over an 8-foot fence. At evening chores one night, I was missing 3 Muscovies. Has anybody seen them? No? Know your purpose. Personal fulfillment. Growing up, I had a bad case of horse fever. I learned to draw horses, I collected horse ornaments, and I read all the Black Stallion books and continually begged my parents for a horse. It was a no-go and a no-brainer because we lived in the middle of Richmond Hill with a backyard the size of a postage stamp. But one day, my dad brought home a large leather horse halter for me. And I hung it in my room, and I was content because I'm 1 step closer to that horse. Which didn't happen until we moved here. Maybe you're going to end up with a hobby farm, and this is kind of what we ended up with. Or more precisely, a Noah's Ark farm. We had chickens and ducks and turkeys and geese and sheep and goats and cows and horses and pigs. But we had our own eggs and milk and poop, and pork and beef and poop, and chicks and goslings and poop. Oh, and one more baby, Aaron. Now we're at 4 girls, 4 boys, and more poop. Is this for a food source? Growing your own food and raising your own meat is very important to a lot of people. It's great that refrigerated trucks and food preservatives allow us access to fresh fruit and vegetables year-round, but that comes at a cost. Our foods are saturated with all kinds of chemicals to increase shelf life and make them bigger and brighter and sweeter and more toxic. Feedlot animals are fed hormones and antibiotics to help them grow faster. So knowing where your food comes from is more than just a luxury. Self-sufficiency and self-reliance come with practice. It involves learning new skills, well, new to some of us. Growing a garden and learning to preserve our food adds to that list of skills. Learning to make these skills pay for themselves is certainly heading in the right direction. How many of you here plan to raise meat birds, chickens there? And is this the first year for any of you? Okay, I got a tip for you. When feeding a large number of dumb meat birds, it's best to have a 2-foot-high fence between you and the birds. If you walk directly into their yard with a bucket of feed, they'll come running at you. They're going to get you. They're going to take you down. They're going to jump in the bucket. You lift 1 foot, and there's a chicken right in that spot, and you can't put your foot down. You're balancing on 1 foot, and you're trying to throw seed 20 feet away. You scream, but nobody hears you. You're trying to kick one of the chickens, and he grabs your pants, and he hangs on. And finally, in defeat, you throw the bucket at them and run for the hills. Morning chores are done. I think I need a coffee. One more point I'd like to make is that saving money is just as good as putting money in the bank. It's money you didn't have to take out of the bank. Raising 2 pigs and selling 1, cut and wrapped, put ours in the freezer for free, including the initial cost of the piglets and the feed. We raised 1 whole beef and sold half cut and wrapped and put our half in the freezer for free. I even paid the naturopath doctor in Carnarvon with chickens. 2 of my sons, this was years ago, fed and watered our layers, collected the eggs, and sold them to our neighbors for $1.50 a dozen. Josh got 50 cents, Dustin got 50 cents and 50 cents into the pot for the feed. By then we also had a team of Belgians. And I learned to do logging with them. And because we lived beside a riding stables, we were subcontracted for hay rides and sleigh rides. And some New Year's Eve, we were booked right till 4 o'clock in the morning. So even the horses paid for their own feed, and we got to ride for free. Know your limits. Do you work full-time? Do you have small children? How many other commitments do you have? Do you have time to build your own coop? Time is somewhat negotiable. If you're short of time in the mornings, you can build larger feeders and larger water containers so you don't have to do chores so often. How are you with energy? Feed bags are heavy. They weigh at least 1,000 pounds. Are you tired? Are you tired when you get home from work? Do you want to sleep in on the weekends? Do you have the energy to build your own coop? Do you look forward to afternoon naps? Are you ADHD? Because if you're not, find out where you can get some, because that comes with boundless energy. And how about your strengths? How organized are you? Are you good in a crisis? Are you a good problem solver? Are you flexible? Do you take advice easily? Are you a team player? Do you stop and get directions? Or do you fly by the seat of your pants? Are you a procrastinator? And do you have a bad memory? Because you can't have both of those. If you procrastinate and you don't have a good memory, then you will completely forget what it was you put off to do later. And a lot of us are procrastinators, aren't we? So, and then your money. Well, the money is self-explanatory. Operate within your budget. Watch for deals. Look online. Check out Marketplace on Facebook. Be thinking and planning ahead. We scored the skeletal remains of some portable garages, and that saved us a lot of money. How determined are you? This involves physical, mental, and emotional determination. There's a saying, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. I have a lot of experience. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm also very determined. All spring and summer and into the fall, I placed goose eggs under anybody that was sitting. And then on October 1st, I was out doing chores, and there he was, the cutest little gosling you ever saw, peeping and peeking out from his surrogate mama's wing. Henry was hatched and raised by a Muscovy mama, whom he outgrew in the first month. The following summer, one of our other Muscovies had 13 babies, and Henry would pace back and forth along the fence. Wouldn't even go to eat. And I was worried about him, but I thought, I'm going to let him in with this family and see what happens. And he moved right in with a not even a do you mind, and protected the whole family. So he is a goose, but he identifies as a Muscovy. Homesteading and farming has its ups and downs, its gains and losses, and its joys and sorrows, just like the stock market. My heart has been broken time and time again, but it keeps on beating. I had the sweetest little silky rooster, Charles, all white and fluffy. Charles would follow me around and talk to me while I was doing chores. He would tell me all about his day. He would tell me he wanted to be a Brahma when he grew up. And I didn't have the heart to tell him he wasn't going to be growing up any more upper than he already was. But very sweet and docile. But whenever my 6'1" son, Caleb, came into the barn, Charles would look way up, like in the Friendly Giant. And then flop up to twice his size and pull out his spurs and attack him ninja style, right at the ankle. And Caleb would reach down, way down, and pick him up and try to make friends, but Charles would have nothing to do with that. Then one night, while we all slept in blissful ignorance, the coop had an uninvited visitor. A weasel had found his way in, and we lost over a dozen birds that night. And the fact that we trapped the weasel brought no comfort. Charles went to chicken heaven with the others. But to end this presentation on a happier note, let me tell you about our bucket babies. Once upon a time, in the heat of the day, one of our hens, Gabriella, I think, came off her nest with 5 little chicks that she had successfully hatched. When a couple of days go by with no action, that usually means that the job is finished, complete, the mission is aborted, and the hen moves on with her hatchlings. So I cleaned up all the broken shells and removed the remaining eggs from her nest and remade her bed. I took that bucket of debris and put it over by the fire pit so that we could just burn it later that evening when the sun went down. But after supper, when I went to do the chores, I could hear peeping coming from the direction of the fire pit. So I go to investigate, and much to my surprise, 2 more chicks had hatched. The day had been one of those unbearably stupid, hot and humid days as far as I was concerned. But it was perfect for the chicks. So I waited till night, when all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The chickens were settled, asleep in their beds, with visions of sugar worms dancing in their heads. I snuck in slowly so as not to be seen and tucked those 2 fledglings right under her wing. The morning burst open, a new sunny day, and the chickens were all happy. I'm happy to say.